Tag, willkommen Sie here. No, this is not in German. Sorry, if you thought that, that's not the case. This is not a German review, this is an English review of a German game. And no, I don't mean Euro, I mean an actual game about Germany. Oktoberfest, the festival of October and beer and things like that. The story behind it is in 1810, Ludwig I and Princess Therese Saxe of Hildburghausen swiftly became an annual tradition known as Oktoberfest. People try to sell their beer to the highest bidder, and there's a lot of bidding that happens. That's a horrible description of what the theme is about, but if you've heard of Oktoberfest, you know that it involves pretzels and beer in Germany, lederhosen and things like that. This game is in that theme. Lots of auctions, lots of beer, lots of tents, lots of pretzels, including a pretzel meeple. Pretzeeple, in fact, I think it's called probably. This is Oktoberfest. Let's take a look right now. So in that incredibly awkward intro, I mentioned there's auctions. In fact, there are 2 auctions that happen in this game. There's really only 3 actions you can do. There's 2 auctions and another action for selling. That's it. That's all this game involves, but it involves some great reading of people and some interesting mechanics right now. Here's what it looks like set up. Why is that important that I say that? Because in the instructions, there is no setup picture of the game. None. So it's a little confusing if you have to just read through it and just try to piece together, because sometimes you don't know if things go face up or face down. And you just try to have to guess based on context, and you do. You find out that they do go face up. Let's figure out what I'm talking about right now with Oktoberfest. Here we go. Everyone also gets 2 double barrel cards of the different types of beer. The different types would be Pilsner, Weissbier, Pale Ale, Dark Lager, Porter, and Stout. Everyone gets a screen which matches their color that they want to be. This is blue. Has a reference card on the back. Excellent. Also, the nice faux 3D forced perspective is a great touch. You hide everything behind your screen. You get 2 cards. The one rule is you just have to make sure that you get 2 different colored or 2 different types of beer. And the one cool thing is they go down in gradation of color based on the color of the actual beer. Nice touch, you know. Everyone also starts with, in a 5-person game, you start with 16 coins and you start with 5 patron tokens. These are all kept behind your screen like this. Everyone also gets a cool little Steineeple. We'll go with that as well. And you'll see what those are for in a minute. So everyone has the 2 colored or 2 different double barrels, your coins, and your patron tokens behind your screen. At the top, you have the supply cards up there. Normally those 3 tapped out ones, which is the empty beer stein, would be inside of that deck, which is cards numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the morning phase, they would also be in there, but I just set them to the side so you could see them. 5, 6 stay to the side, and then 7 stay to the side. The point of that is, in the morning phase, which is these 3 turns, you only have cards 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the afternoon, you get 5 and 6, and in the evening, you get 7s. What does that mean? What does the morning, afternoon, any of that have to do with? Well, let's talk just for a minute. You have the tents here. These are what you're going to close to get points, and the gates up there. So that's where people come in. They mill around. You're trying to get them to your tents to sell them the most beer to make the most points, not most money, although I'm sure it has something to do with that in real life. So let's talk the different actions. On your turn, you have 1 of 3 actions you can do. You can auction supply cards, you can sell a barrel, or you can close a tent. What does that mean? So let's say I want to auction a supply cards. What happens is, of these 3 gates up at the top, you take the pretzel token, if it's your turn, if you're the active player. Isn't that awesome? Pretzel meeple. You put it at 1 of the 3 gates, and you auction it off. Well, you don't start the auction. The person to your left starts by bidding a certain number of coins. It goes around 1 turn. Highest bidder either gets to play the cards and supply the beer, which we'll talk about in a minute, or the person who set the auction can pay the highest bidder that amount of coins plus 1 to do it themselves. So basically, when you auction supply cards, you're either going to make money or you're going to get beer barrels. It's one of the 2 things that can happen. So you may want to do this to get money, but you also may want to do this if you need beer barrels. You say, what do you need beer barrels for? I'll show you that in just a minute. Now here's the second part of this action. The auction winner is the person who bids the most. It's either the person who started the auction, if they decide to, or the person who has the highest bid, will then discard 1 of the 2 cards. So let's say he drew the 4, 1, and 1. Well, in this case, you would look and you discard 1 of them. They're all different types of beer. They're all numbered 1 through 4. The way this works is you're going to supply tents based on these numbers. There's a few placement rules. So let's just get rid of the 1 for saying, and I'll explain why in just a second. So we have 2 stouts here. So you're going to put one here, and you have to put them on 2 different tents, but they also have to be in sequential number. So let's just say this was already out here. I could then go ahead and play the 4 on top of that 1, but you can never play under that. So basically, the most amount of points this could be during the morning is only 5 with these 2 cards. And you can actually have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and then you get more points. But if you want to go ahead and jump up, you could do that. But that's not what happens. Play these 2 cards. Now you're going to supply them. So a 4 beer number supply card allows you to supply up to 2 barrels. This is a really weird concept, and it's hard to wrap around thematically what you're doing here. But the 1 allows you to do 1. Up in the top left corner, you'll see that for 1 barrel, it costs you 1 coin. 2 barrels cost you 3 coins. 3 barrels is 5. And I think 4 is 7. What that means is, now, let's just say, so I paid the auction. Let's just say the auction was 5. The highest bid was 5, and I paid 6 to do it myself. So I kick out 6 coins to the person who actually had the highest bid, right? I then will take, I'm going to do 2 barrels of stout here and 1 barrel there. So you would do a 2 barrel, which would be 3 coins, and a 1 barrel, which would be 4 coins. So I would then pay 4 more coins, but I would get 3 barrels of stout. And I would put them behind my screen until later. You say, what is the point of having these? You'll see in just a minute. So now, actually, because my double barrel card is also stout, I now have 5 barrels of stout beer, plus the 2 barrels of pale ale. Play goes on like this. You would refill there. You'd keep putting cards here onto these spaces, sequential numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. If a gate's cards cannot be placed, you put the closed gate marker on it. Now, if all 3 gates are closed, you have to do one of the other 2 actions, which would be sell the beer, which means now, so when I paid those 4 coins to supply the beer barrels, I didn't pay them to the highest bidder that time. When I got these beer barrels in my hand, I put them above the type of beer it was. So this was stout, so now there are 4 coins above stout. So let's just say it comes all the way back around to me. In my action, instead, I want to sell a stout. So I can sell a stout beer, put the card back, and I take all the money above it. Now let's just say, though, that money was here at the Vice beer, but I don't have any Vice beer to sell. I could then still sell the stout and take half the money rounded up from any one of these places. So sometimes it might actually be beneficial not to sell the one in your hand, but to actually take one of the other ones, because you can get more money with half. Let's say there's 3 at the stout, but there's 8 here. It'd be better to get the 4 coins here than it would to get the 3 there. And there's no difference in reason of why you wouldn't or wouldn't do that. Next, the last action you can do is the close a tent. And the way this works is, you do another auction, but this time you don't use your coins to auction, you use your patron tokens. So once around auction using patron tokens, you score the closed tent, take back the unused bid, and divide the remaining patrons. I should mention, when you are doing the auction for a gate up there at the front with the coins, if you bid and lose, you keep your money, you don't spend it. So it's kind of a nice thing. Let's just say, you say, okay, I want to close a tent. Now the person to the left will then take however many patron tokens they want and put it on top of one of the tents they want to close. So I just put 4 here. Now remember, you start with 5. The rule is you can never put the equal amount on any tent, but you can also not put less here. So someone else goes around, if they want to bid here, they would have to put 5. But the thing is, you may not, it's kind of hard. You typically wouldn't want to bid on the same tent because you might have different cards. Like, let's just say that that we're in the evening now. Well, the porter is out there. So now they want to bid on the porter because they have porter cards instead of stout cards. They don't have stout cards. So they're going to want to say, well, I'm going to put 5 here on the porter. Well, then they would bid their 5 there. It goes around until the last person, which would be the person who started the round and did the auction. Also, they would pick this up to indicate that a tent has been closed. That means they also get 1 extra patron. They would look at what's out there, the supply of the board. They would see, patron tokens on 2 different ones, 3 different ones, however many people bid, right? And they can either influence it by adding more. Now granted, you still have to follow the rules. So if this had 2, you would have to put 3 there. If this has 4, you would have to put 5 there. You couldn't put the equal amount. And they can either influence it to get the one they want to close, or they could say, well, I'm kind of happy with this one closing. We'll just let it go. So when it closes, the person who loses, the tents that lose, they get their patron tokens back, which is kind of nice. The one that wins, these get split up amongst the losers. So there are 4. In a 5-person game, everybody would get 1. Now, if there were more than 4 here, everybody would get 1, and you would put the extras here. filling up this to where the person who closes these tents later will get more and more patrons. You then score it, and the way this scores is the one that's on top. So this is a stout. Doesn't matter what's under it type of beer wise, it matters the numbers now. So this is worth 5 points. Everyone compares barrels. They say, okay, I've got, how many stouts did I have? I think I had 5 stout. I have 5 stout cards. So I would be first place because nobody else would have more than 5 possibly, but if they do, they would have first. If I'm in first, I score the full amount, so I would score 5 points. The person with second place amount of barrels of that beer would score half of the amount. So they would score and round it up, so 3 points. Person in third place in a 5-person game would score half of the half, which means they would score 2 points because it's half of 3 rounded up. And that's how it works. You flip these over, and this tent is closed until the afternoon, and then you take all the cards from there, all the cards from the discard pile, and the 5s and 6s, and the tap out cards, and you reshuffle them. So what happens with the tap out cards? The first one you draw does nothing. But when you draw the second tap out card, you take the highest valued tent, the one on top, which this is a 7, you then throw them in the discard pile, take the discard pile, take the deck, and shuffle it back together. You don't, however, take the cards from the gates. You leave the ones in the gates, but you do shuffle the discard pile with the draw pile, so you have a new draw deck. You do not put the tapped out cards back in until the afternoon. So when let's say we've closed 3 gates, well then what happens is everything that has been closed goes out of the game completely. It doesn't go back in the game. Ones that are still open or ones that still have cards on them stay. Let's just say this is out there. Those stay. Afternoon, the closed tent goes away. You would shuffle all those cards together and make a new draw pile, including adding the 5s and 6s, and you keep going. So that's it. That's the game. There's a lot of auctioning like that. There's a lot of different mechanics. There's a lot of different buying beer. Now, what are these things here, these coasters? There are cards that say wild on them. Let's see if I can find one right here just to show you. So wild beer, the way this works is this becomes anything you want it to be. So if I play the 6 on top of there, I would take, let's say I want it to be dark lager, I'll put the dark lager on there. Now, so if someone else wants to play another wild card elsewhere, they cannot put the dark lager on top as a wild until this has been covered up. So let's just say a 7 Weiss beer covers this up. That goes back and is now available to play again. So then when this one's scored, when you close the tent, we're talking about 7 plus 6 plus 4 plus 1. So 17, 18 points right there. So this is now getting a lot bigger points. Now it's 18 points. Plus, when you supply a 7, these start to have 4 barrels. You can do up to 4 barrels when you supply it. So if you have enough money in this game, you can have a lot of barrels behind your hands and just get ready for when those tents close. You have enough in your supply to you can at least come in second on every tent that's out there, or even come in first on most of the tents that's out there. So there's a lot of strategy in this game. Do you stick with just one beer type and force that tent to close? That's one way to play. Or do you spread yourself out enough to where you can beat most other people at tents closing? It's a really deeper game than it looks, because you would think, well, there's just 2 auction systems, that's all there is. That's true. But you have to also collect the beer, and you have to be able to make sure you can influence and get other people to help you close the tents you want to close. Because there are a lot of times too when this will happen where you'll have multiple Weiss beers. And so it actually would behoove you to have either of these tents closed, but obviously this one's worth more than that one. So you have to just kind of play strategy like that and try to get the best option you can get at the time. I know that sounds like any game, but especially in this one, because your best option might not be possible, but your second best one might. So that's how you play. So that's Oktoberfest. In a nutshell, it is a game about auctioning beer to the highest seller. Great components. The board's a little bit dark. That's my only complaint. The board is a little bit dark. It's actually kind of hard to see, but it's a cool zoomed out picture of this huge festival with hundreds of people, thousands of people there. Cool little miniature coasters for the different wild card types of beer. Really interesting the way you kind of have the multiple mechanics. It's not the easiest game to grasp when you're reading it from the instruction book. It's not the easiest game to go, oh, okay, I see how this plays now. It's not actually. It's actually kind of difficult. But cool thing about it is, once you get it, it plays really smooth. We played it with the 5 count complement. I thought it was a really good number actually, because it made the auctions that much more interesting. And I like that. I like the fact that you auction things around, they go around in the circle, and you have a good time with that. It's a fun mechanic because it happens twice. You bid your money first, and then you bid your patrons. So you have these 2 different currencies that you use for different auctions, and I think that's a cool thing. You can help work together with other people, and I like that about the closing tents. You can both of you know roughly, based on what you played last time, what kind of beer that person has barrel-wise. And so it gives you the opportunity to kind of have an idea to work with somebody else and be, hey, let's close that tent. Don't you want to help bid with me? And so I think that's really cool. A lot of great reading, a lot of great reading of people and mechanics like that. So really fun game. Oktoberfest, Carla really enjoyed Oktoberfest. And she didn't think she was going to at first. So I think you should definitely pick up Oktoberfest. Don't let the crazy, silly front get you, because the back of the board is very business. Or the board itself, as you saw, it's very business looking. But I love any game that gives you your own little screen to hide stuff from. It's like Game of Thrones meets Oktoberfest. Kind of. It's what it's like almost. But should you pick up this game? Absolutely. It's a good price point. Very easy to teach once you know the rules. Once you know the rules, it's actually easy to teach. It's not the easiest game to learn straight from the instructions, because there's only 1 or 2 pictures in the entire instructions. There's a lot of examples of rules, but there's only 1 or 2 pictures. So that's the only tricky thing. There's nothing set up. But you should check it out. Great game. Rio Grande has done a good job with this game. It's a lot of fun. Let's give the designers credit. Joshua Gerald Balvin. Great game, man. It's really fun. Oktoberfest. Have a good time with us. Great meeples, great production quality, all that kind of stuff. So until next time, this is Bryan Drake with the latest retro. That is Oktoberfest, and we will see you next time. Auf Wiedersehen. All right, seriously, bye.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.